good. They lost over $100,000 a month. So they were a loser. So you don't put the store generally where you know they lost money, and there's a way to make it profitable, but they can't put a store there because Dominic's has an exclusive on groceries. And they have to pay $1.25 million until next year with a $100,000 a month lease. If they put anybody in that shopping center, they lose that $100,000 a month. $100,000 a month is less than they were losing, so they're making money by keeping that store closed. So if you didn't know that, that's the logic. It's a financial decision, and it's what makes that work. The normal supermarkets won't come here based on their own demographic standards. The neighborhood has lost 20% of the population since 2000 to 2011. And that doesn't look good. The average income is $29,000. That doesn't look good. The high link usage, when you're talking about Mariano's and Whole Foods, the majority of their good margin profit is in takeout. You can't do takeout with a link card. It has to be cooked from scratch. So if you don't start out with what the real problems are, your solution is stupid. It won't work. And that's why we had to have a 4-year study on how we would come up with a chain of supermarkets that would go where we expect to have a continuing exodus nationwide of demographics that don't meet the store standards that maybe Pete's does and Mariano's and Whole Foods do. So things, we initially were considering either the west side or the south side as an initial start to show off the solution before we went national. And our first idea was to go to Alfred Grisham, coincidentally, and Father Flater's group actually endorsed us. But because a classmate of mine that I was stuck in school with for 4 years lived here, he asked me to take a look here, and we shifted, and I've recently moved to the neighborhood on the South Shore. So we are looking at either buying the shopping center or building along 75th Street. We have enough space for what we want to do. But
so
our incentive, incidentally, is a for-profit with a B Corp. A B Corp is what's called a social enterprise, and it has to have a community purpose. So it's a little bit different.
So I'm gonna stop. You're gonna be next. So 5 more questions. I'm gonna set the timer for 1.5 minutes.
Well, she's on the same topic, and I'm gonna switch.
So whenever y'all hear the alarm go off, you gotta stop.
I'd like you
So there you go.
change the narrative. Instead of talking about what our demographic cannot support, I'd like to talk about the letter that I wrote on May 30th to the Obama Library Foundation about locating the library in the cultural center. In the 65-acre lakefront downtown view piece of land that we own in our community. My name is Susan Motley, and I'm retired. I'm not here representing anyone but myself and my photographer partner, Brian. And we live on 72nd and South Shore Drive. So what I do with my friend is walk over, we do about 3 miles up to the 63rd Street beach. And when I walk over past the cultural center and by the lake, I could be in the south of France. I could be in the Italian Riviera. It is so beautiful. It is so precious. So I wrote the letter.
So Ms. Motley, that was your time. I gotta give you 1 more minute.
I'm here to urge the Planning Coalition to form a committee to articulate the South Shore community support for locating the Obama Presidential Library on a part of about 15 or 20 acres of the 60-plus acre lakefront park, now known as the South Shore Cultural Center. It is understood that the historic landmark clubhouse and beach and wildlife preserve will be maintained, enhanced, and remain free and open to the public.
I actually live slightly south of here, what's known as Bush. I'm Karen, I live south of here, what's known as Bush, 85th and the Lake. I just want to remind everyone that there is a farmer's market. It is open tomorrow, 12 to 5 at 79. And also speaking of issues that we sometimes have, it seems like we're having an issue with the bathrooms. So it would seem like the participants will be supporting this market, and they have not been accepted as supportive. Hearing this theme that we're going to our state rep and legislators because we're having issues with how the city treats us, and I feel that very much from our neighborhood.
Are you in a park? Is your farmer's market in a park?
I'm not the director of the farmer's market. It's
Rainbow
Muhammad.
It's at Rainbow Beach.
Yeah, okay.
So, yes, your legislators in this area need to hear, because we fund the Chicago Park District. And one of our problems with, just like when we fund CPS, we give them the bulk of the money, but they use it the way they want to use the money. So what we're trying to do is pull back on how we disperse money so we can have some control over it. You need to talk to whoever represents this area about that issue, and then we can hold some of that capital money that we have coming to the Park District.
I'm Joyce, and I'm from Sunny, which is the 7th floor. And our big issue is that we have, and what you said that you're on the finance committee, we have a lot of foreclosure as a result of, I guess, the predatory lending. And what this gentleman spoke to was the 20% decrease in the people in the community. That's what it has to do with the fact that we have major foreclosure, or homes that look like they're foreclosed. They're boarded up. We don't know whether they're owned or whether they're actually foreclosed. But as a result of that, our property values have plummeted. Who's going to buy over here? Who's going to rent over here other than a certain type of people? I hate to say it, but my property value is like we're zero. Even though I've done everything to keep my property up. It goes the same thing with the stores in the community. The Aldi's moved out, the Walgreens moved out. They all moved someplace else. And I don't know if it has to do with the number of people in the community, or if it's just the fact that there's some type of agenda to drive people away.
Well, I think one of the agenda is when you have poor schools, nobody's going to live in an area that has poor schools.
Middle-class families, when you can afford, you leave the community for the most part, right? If you can. So it's driven by an agenda of poor schools, lack of opportunity for jobs, or high unemployment. So what happens when kids are not able to get jobs, they resort to criminal activity. So then you have the inflow of the guns in the community. It's not so much drugs anymore, so much as guns, I think, and gangs, activities that go on. I don't know how you feel, but I voted against conceal and carry because I don't care what 49 other states are doing. I think it's counterintuitive that if you have more guns, you're going to be safer. We have a gun for every probably man, woman, and child in the United States, and yet we have the most homicides, the most deaths by guns, whereas England, Australia, they have more restrictive on gun possession, have very little gun crime. So, but when you fail to educate a child, what is their alternative? So it really starts with early childhood education, but even before that, it starts with household and parenting. We've lost parenting skills along the way because younger and younger our kids are having children. Many times the grandparent is no longer in the house, or the grandparent is now 30 years old. So, first of all, we want to recapture the core values that I received from my grandmother and most of you all received, that starts in the family. And for some reason, if they don't get it in the family environment, let's help the church reclaim their responsibility. So it's not just ministering on Sunday, because a lot of the ministers live out of the communities. And even the parishioners come into the sites in the urban area. So the church doors need to be open 7 days a week.
Yes.
And they need to offer programs to get their kids off the streets.
Yes.
I think that's what ministry is. And for the Christians that are in the gathering, Jesus was very seldom in the synagogue. His ministry was in the streets. And so I think the church has to reclaim that and not become so profit-driven as people and mission-driven. So I think we need to reclaim that. And if it's not in the church, it's the neighbor or the community. So when I see young girls, I live in Auburn Gresham and I have a house on the corner. So every morning I get up, I have to go out and pick up beer bottles, Church's chicken or Popeye's chicken, diapers. And so I'm frustrated.
Yes.
But I not only have a role as a legislator, but I have the role as the nosy neighbor. And so when I see children behaving badly, I tell them, and I try to say it with a smile, because I think sometimes they're looking for attention, so any attention works miracles, I think. And so when I see a young girl using language that I don't even know the terminology anymore, I go up to them and I say, and it takes a lot of restraint on my part, but I try to smile and I say, young lady, you're such a pretty young lady. Those words don't reflect, I think, who you are. I try to do it that way, just so they'll know that I'm doing it because I care.
Exactly.
That I don't want to beat up on them because I'm sure they've been beat down enough. And they have very low self-esteem, and we have a crisis in confidence in many of my young girls, especially. And so I try to talk to them with love in my voice, because I think they might listen then. And so I have a responsibility as not only as a legislator, but as a community resident as well. And so it really starts in the community with people taking ownership and taking back their lives. So many of these families, they know when their kids have guns and drugs in their house, and so I believe in stitching, if you want to say that word. So when I know something is going wrong, I say on my block, I pick up the phone and I call.
Yes.
I just don't let it go as a norm. We've gotten so accustomed to abnormality in our community. We should not get gunshots. We should be able to walk and jog in my community.
Amen.
Just like north of 12th Street.
So we've got 3 more questions, Delphine, and then this gentleman here, and then Sharon. So Delphine, yeah.
first. There you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Delphine Smith, and I've been working with the school, the CPS, trying to get psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists into the school, trying to get mentors to mentor children, which will, these are employed mentors, to mentor children that are our children are on the siege, and they need help. They need guidance. And this is what the program is that I'm working with. I've already been accepted into, what's the name of the school up here? Boucher. And trying to get help for our children. They need help. They need to be mentored, things that they're not getting at home. These mentors will be, like I say, paid to mentor the children. The psychiatrist would only oversee the group therapies, and he would do a one-on-one when it's necessary. Our children are going through a lot of things at home that we don't even know anything about. they're being sexually abused, they're doing drugs. I'm talking about elementary children. So our children really need help. If you know any psychiatrists that would like to work with us, please contact me. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. First, I'd like to thank you for supporting homeless youth funding. There's a homeless youth shelter for the first time in 30 years that serves this community and all the way over to Auburn Gresham. And we've been full. And lately, since the weather turned warm, we haven't been. But we were definitely full during all the cold weather and the polar vortexes. We thank that because homeless youth program funding in the state budget was at risk, and appreciate your support. Secondly, I was wondering about two questions. One question is about the grocery store, and I know that when Sears was threatening to pull out of the area, there were some state funds that were given as perks for Sears to stay, and I was just wondering if there might be some pot to dip into that would help get us a grocery store. Then the second question I have is unrelated, but certainly related to the community, and that's about South Shore Drive. And I had an off-the-record conversation with one of the McAfee developers of the steelworks site, and they were talking about significantly having to widen South Shore Drive and maybe even raise some buildings in the future, that the fixes they were talking about, having express lanes and so forth, they handle the influx of 35,000 cars a day, were only quick fixes and they were not going to last. So I was wondering if there was any arm of the state that we could use to fight widening South Shore Drive significantly.
So on the first question, well, I think it's like 34,000 homeless kids in the Chicago public school system at this time. And I sponsored a truancy task force looking at how do we keep kids in the classroom, in the schools, and the majority of those kids for truancy reasons, not only because of violence and gangs and bullying, but because of homelessness. So I work better when I have people on the outside lobbying and fighting on the issues and educating me, because so many issues come before me, but I need the help of every constituent to educate me on what is actually going on the ground. Now, as far as the South Shore, you said you're fighting against the widening of the street. So is that a state road or is that a city?
It's 41.
44, that's federal.
It's federal, so you need to talk to your congressman about it. But I know that the city was thinking of expanding or making Ashland Avenue on the north side a rapid transit, and the community came out and they're fighting it, and the businesses are fighting it. So I think we have to regain protest, or we have to regain the passion for protest. The Hispanics have caught on and sort of taken the principles that we set forth in the 60s, and they're utilizing it, because I think we've got to a point where we're too complacent, and we think the generation, at least behind us, think we've already made it. There's nothing else to fight and struggle about. But I think we're regressing now because we've lost that spirit of fight and protest, and you see it in the school system as well. Many of our kids are suffering from post-traumatic stress because of what they encounter on a day-to-day basis, the violence. You cannot tell me if you see a corpse laying in the street or your best friend is killed that you're not suffering some kind of mental stress, and yet the mayor saw fit to close the mental health facilities in many of our communities. And so I think we have to start raising our voice. But you talk to the congressman if it's federal, but the state has given the city $13 million in this budget. And I'm telling the aldermen to start prioritizing or asking and requesting for that money. We don't communicate with each other. The congressional representatives don't communicate with the state, and the state representatives don't communicate with the city. But until we come together and lobby together on issues that are important to our constituencies, we get very little done because they bifurcate or they play one against the other. And so we have to learn better how to just work together from the federal, state, and the city level. I had the alderman calling me about issues that they should be fighting for in the city council. The money is there. We've given the money to the mayor. You have to go in and fight for that, your piece of the money. So in the next tax bill that you're going to get, I'm so glad they're going to show you how much of your tax money is going for tips. So that is an issue that we're fighting as well, the tip money, how it's being utilized. So one of the other bills that I just sponsored was Charter School Accountability Act because, and CPS is fighting me, the charter schools are fighting me, but the situation that you had at UNO, where it wasn't really open enrollment, it was selective enrollment, but they said the lottery was fair. The lottery was not fair. They were siphoning off money from the traditional schools, but the businesses or the director of the school was using it for his private company to give out contracts to his relatives. And so I sponsored a bill that got a lot of pushback, but I feel that charter schools were initially set up to be experimental and provide working models to bring back into traditional schools. So I believe in strong neighborhood schools, and we should be putting resources into neighborhood schools so our kids don't have to, or you don't have to close schools or turn them around. You can have actual good schools in your neighborhood where the kids are safe. You don't have to cross gang boundaries. We tried to tell the Renaissance 2010, which I was against, we tried to tell Mayor Daley at the time that we were endangering our children's lives by closing schools, turning around, and that's traumatic for a young elementary child. And so I'm persona non grata with a lot of people, but that's why I'm in the General Assembly.
So we've got two more questions, two last questions, this gentleman here, and then Sharon. And I can.
So, Senator Collins, thanks for coming out, listening to some of your concerns, to some of your constituents. My name is JACQUELINE and I'm a businessman in the area. And one of my concerns that I have is existing businesses and our ability to try to stay in Chicago and function and be a profitable institution. What we're finding is that with the increase of taxes and utilities and everything else that's going on, the existing businesses are closing up at a rapid pace. We try to go to the banks to get loans, get refinanced. They're not friendly at all with us. They run down the same type of statistics that I think a gentleman had mentioned earlier about the demographics, the wages, things of that nature. They really don't want to support us anymore. What can you do in Springfield to help in that dilemma that we're in right now? Because you're talking about businesses coming in, trying to bring new businesses in, but the existing business is going to be gone very shortly because we can't afford to stay here anymore. It's really exciting.
So the problem is that as a community, we don't support our businesses. A lot of the problems in the community. You do not get a lot of support from the people that look like you and me to your businesses.
I don't have that problem.
What is your line of business?
Real estate and commercial properties, restaurants.
I don't know that area. I don't have expertise in that area, but I know many of the other businesses that are faltering. Was it Reggio's Pizza came to see me? I think Reggio's is a black-owned pizza. They were having problems. Not only that they getting contracts with the city, because they used to be in the Chicago public school system, and then the city, someone outbid them, so they couldn't bring their pizza back. And so you deal with all your legislators, but start with the city. Because they give out they determine what businesses actually come into a ward, and they're there to allow them and to support them. Now, we passed legislation that allows businesses, you used to have to pay like $500 to get a license or whatever. We've knocked it down to, I think, $75. $75. So, but really, I I think that we have to educate our community as well. Because I listen to VON a lot, and when they have businesses, small businesses on there, they don't, some of the businesses in the black community don't buy advertisement in some of the black-owned media. And so, how do you get the word out outside of your community that you actually have a business? So there's a lot of education that have to go on back and forth. I heard John Rogers on the radio the other day. He said one of the reasons he was able to start Aerial Investments because he went to the banks, and the banks were not going to give him any money. He had to go to the black businesses. Johnson Publishing, I think that time they had some Johnson Oldsmobile or some kind of dealership. But when we lose our black businesses, we lose the ability to be independent.
Exactly.
And so I don't know about real estate or whatever, and I don't know what kind of laws that negatively impact you. If you can tell me some of the restrictions that you have in realty, I can look at the laws. My issue is I do policy, right? So how do I make it easier for you? I know that in some of the banks that I deal with, there's a requirement, there's something called the Community Reinvestment Act that I try to pressure them, but you need to have a relationship with who your local representative is, because they can actually go in with you if you have issues and talk to the mayor. We just know that small businesses, the proportion of percentage of contracts going out has diminished. Even though they have a requirement. I just saw a story in the Tribune, I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, that one of the contractors that were involved in fraud is going to get a contract because he underbid it the minority.
Wow.
So, I think it's in the Tribune today. So, there's a fight, but you need to educate us on what your issue is, especially whatever your direct legislators, your alderman, whatever. So, and
I'm sorry, somebody else had a question?
And I wanted to make this statement really quickly too. I've been working with PNC Bank for a little while because I just started my business not too long ago. And they've been really helpful. And we've also kind of started making sort of a triad of a relationship between the chambers who now have micro lending funds, plus PNC Bank, who's like a local, who's actually really into local community stuff, plus Chicago Community Initiatives, right? So sort of starting to triangulate relationships between people who are already in the community and continuously work here as financial, institutions, and sort of layering that with, the aldermen, and then getting relationships with your neighbors and all of this kind of thing, because it's more about relationships than anything. I mean, I've gotten money for stuff that I've